Hello. In this video, we're going to learn how to use JavaFX to create three different kinds of charts to help with simple data visualization. In particular, we're going to learn about how to create pie charts, line charts, and bar charts. And as you'll see, they all have a lot in common with each other. And also, they have some features in common with creating tables in JavaFX as well, as we will soon see. Right, to begin, since this is a JavaFX application, we're going to be extending the application class. And let's add a comment too. Now we're going to create a pie chart first in JavaFX. All right, as usual, our public static void main has us launch the application, catch the errors, and then exit. And then we're on to the start function, which takes a stage as a parameter. Every application must have this method. We'll start off by setting the title. We'll call this pie chart example. Here, I'm going to use a VBox for my layout manager, and I'm going to center everything in that VBox. So it'll align everything in the center, and every time we add something to the VBox, it'll be added one beneath the other. It'll align things vertically for us. I will initialize our scene using that root element. Then we'll attach the scene to the stage. And once we write our custom code at the very end, we always have to remember to show the stage. All right, to begin, we're going to go ahead and initialize a pie chart, which is pretty straightforward. We're going to create a pie chart called chart. That will be a new pie chart. Next, we need to create a list to store the data which will be displayed by the pie chart. Now, in a different video lesson, when we learned about creating table views to display a list, we first created some kind of a data class, like a person class to store information. Here, the data which is stored in a pie chart takes a very specific format, and there's an inner class called data within pie chart, which contains the correct format. So we're going to create an observable list, and the type of data it will store is pie chart.data. I'll call this perhaps data list. And remember, to initialize an observable list, it's like an array list with some extra functionality built in. We're going to use the FX collections class and the static method observable array list. Right. Next, we need to add some data to this list. Data list dot add some new pie chart data. And the two parameters, capital D for the class name, the parameters we need are the label for that slice of pie and the amount. So for instance, I might have, I don't know, apples, and maybe there's 30 apples. What else should I add here? Maybe I'll add two more things. Maybe we'll add bananas. Maybe 10 of those. Would be a good third thing to add. Oranges. Maybe we'll add 20 of those. You might notice that these numbers do not add up to 100 or 100%, but based on the amounts of each item, the pie will be divided proportionally. There's also many options we can use to set the style of the chart, which we'll see in a little bit. First, we're going to see what a default chart looks like. So we have to associate the data list to the chart. So chart.setData to be data list. And then we need to be sure to add our chart to the screen. And so for the root element, since we're using a VBox this time, a VBox contains a list of child elements. So we'll get the children list, and then we'll add the chart to it. All right, that's basically what we need. Now we're going to go ahead and run this and see what it looks like. All right, and here we go. We've got a pie chart. We have apples, bananas, and oranges. And you might remember that apples, there were 30, and there were 20 oranges and 10 bananas. So the apples formed 50%. That's why they get kind of half the bar chart, like so. Sorry, half the pie chart. Excellent. Next, I want to show you some of the options you have for formatting the chart. So we're going to go right back into the class. Might want to make maybe every font a little bit larger. So I'm going to add a style. Right, so let me say root.setStyle, and this is going to be -fx-font-size 20. Right, this is basically CSS code. We could associate a separate CSS file if we wanted and read that in, but all we want to change is the font size. So this will work for our purposes. Now let's go down and see how we can customize this chart. Just as the window has a title, we can set the title of a chart as well. I'll call this chart fruit because it stores fruit. You have the option of making labels visible or invisible. And so I would say something like set labels visible. They were visible before, so it's true by default, but if you wanted to make them invisible, you could set that to false. Let's see, you could make the lines that go from the words to the chart a little bit longer if you wanted. So chart.set line length. Set that to, I don't know, 40. You also have a legend, right? The legend tells you what each one of the colors stands for. Oh, set line length. Oh, that should be set label line length. All right, next we have the legend that tells you what color is associated to each one of the items, which is a little bit redundant because we also had the labels being visible as well. But you could choose whether you want that to be visible or not. Again, it is visible by default. But you could set it to false if you want, and that's the method you would use. And finally, by default, we saw that the legend appeared below the chart. You can change where the legend appears in relation to the chart with a method called setLegendSide. And then there's some enumerated constants in the side class. I want to set this to appear on the left side. Oh, let me make this capital. All right, very good. Now let's go ahead and run this again, and we should see our chart appears slightly differently. Yep, and sure enough, the lines are a little bit longer. The legend is on the left. The fonts are larger. There's a title here. If I were to make the window a little bit larger, the chart will dynamically resize, take advantage of that extra space. Notice that the legend stays on the left as we wanted. The last thing you might want to change, you might want to change the colors of some of the pie slices. Again, this can be accomplished using CSS, kind of in a similar style to how we changed the font size. We can also do that to the items in the pie chart as well. For instance, it might be visually appealing to make the bananas slice yellow and the oranges slice orange. So let's see how to do that. All right, so right now we have 3 items in our list, and maybe we want to assign these colors red, yellow, orange. The easiest way to do this is going to be to set up a list of colors. And so maybe I'll do that. I'll interject that code. Right here, assign new colors to pie slices. I'm going to go ahead and, well, first I'm going to set up a string of color names. In this case, the colors I'd like to use are red, yellow, and orange. Next, I'm going to create a for loop for int I equals 0. as long as I is less than 3, that's how many colors we have, I++. What I need to do is go into the data list and extract each piece of data. And so I'll start off by creating an object, pie chart.data. Data equals, from the data list, I'm going to get object I. I can do that because it's an array list. I can get the item at position I. And then next, I want to get the associated node, and I want to add some kind of style information to that particular node corresponding to this data. So let's create a string, maybe called style. I want this to read -fx-pi-color, colon, and then get the color from the color names array. So that string plus color names at position I. All right, and now from data, we're going to get the node associated to that, and then we're going to set its style to be that string that we just created. All right, so this should assign new colors to each one of those pie slices. Let's head back to the class. Let's give this a run. Whoops. All right, null pointer exception. I think I did this in the wrong order. Let me go ahead and rearrange this. I think the problem is there's no nodes associated yet because we haven't actually attached the list to the chart. So this was the wrong place to insert this code. Let me go ahead and put this down here. All right, let's try that again. All right. And here we have it. We have apples, bananas, and oranges with the colors that we were hoping for. Excellent. All right. Next, what I'd like to do is show you how to make a line chart. It's got some things in common with a pie chart, as we'll soon see. Once again, I'm starting with a template style file, changing the name of the application class to line chart. And so here I'd like to create a line chart. You can think of that as like an XY chart. It's like we're plotting points on a graph, right? But not a scatter plot. I want to connect these different points with lines. So once again, we're extending the application class. Public static void main is the same as usual. In the start method, let's go ahead and give this class a name. This is the line chart example. Let's also increase the font size, root.setStyle, FX font size 20. Let's write some customized code. Before I actually create my line chart, it's important to know what the axes are going to be. So I'm going to start off by creating two objects called number axis. I'm going to create an x-axis and a y-axis. So I have an x-axis and a y-axis. And once I've declared some axes, I'm going to be ready to create a line chart object. So I have a line chart. I'll call this chart equals a new line chart. Right? And it won't compile unless we actually put in the two axes. So x-axis and y-axis. All right. As before, we're going to go ahead and create an observable list that will store the data which is displayed on this chart. And the type of data it stores, this is going to be XY data. So the XY chart class also has data which will store X and Y values for us. So I'll create this, I'll call it data list. Now I'll initialize it from the FX collections class as before. an observable array list. Right, and I can go ahead and create some data points to add to this. Maybe in this case, I'll just generate them with a loop for, let's say, for int I equals 0, I less than 10, I plus plus. The data list, let's add some new data to this. Let's add a new XY chart dot data. And I need to put some X and Y values in here. Maybe let's put I and, I don't know, 2 times I plus 3. Just generating some random data. Actually, no, it'd be really cool if this wasn't just a straight line. So maybe let's try 0.5 times I squared plus 3. Not sure why, but that sounds pretty good to me. All right, so we've got our chart, we've got our data list. Now we need to associate the data list to the chart, as we often do, as we always do. Chart dot, like to set the corresponding data to be pulled from data list. And I need to always remember to add my chart to my root element. Again, I'm using a VBox in this case, so I'm going to get the list of children and add the chart. All right, let's go ahead and see what this looks like. I'm going to run the line chart example. Oh, what's wrong? Let's see. A null pointer exception? I think that's remaining errors from last time. Let's try running that one more time. All right. What's the issue? Exception application start method. XY chart data cannot be cast to XY chart series. Oh, that's right. So there is one extra step we need to do. When you have a line chart, often you might have more than one graph on a line chart. For example, you might be comparing different graphs. What I actually need to do is I've got some line data here. By default, a line chart supports the inclusion of multiple lists of data. And a list of lists is contained in something called a series object. So I also need to create a new thing called a series. So let's create another observable list. And this is going to be of type XY chart dot series. I'll call this a series list. And again, consider this to be a list of lists, if you will. We initialize it the same way that we do our other list, observable array list. And then what I'd like to do is, well, now that I have a data list, I'd like to add that data list to the series list. And so let's say series list dot add a new XY chart dot series. See, this first series, I'll call it 0.5x squared plus 3. Right, so this will be kind of the label for that particular chart, or for this piece of data. And to this, I'm adding data list. And then the chart data is this series. All right, that should fix that error. And then we'll show how versatile this is by adding a second data list to this chart as well. All right, so for one chart, or for one list of data, it seems like an unnecessary extra step. But as we saw, we do need to do this. Let's go ahead and rerun this code. Let's see if we can get that line chart to appear. And sure enough, there's our line chart. That looks pretty good. And so we've got these different data points. They're graphed. Notice that the parameters on the axes are calculated for us automatically, and the graph will resize itself whenever we resize the window. It's really very nice. All right, let's also experiment with adding another piece of data as well, right? Or another list of data rather. Right, so we have one list of data that we've added to our series. We can add multiple lists if we wish. So I'm going to create a second observable list. I'll copy this code right here. I'll call this data list 2. And for this data list, let's see. Maybe we'll do something a little bit different. Let's try, instead of an int list, let's create a double starting at 0, going up to 10. And let's go up by x plus equals, let's try 0.25. And what I'd like to add now is x and, let's see, this other chart got pretty big. Let me say maybe 10 times math.sin of x. All right, so again, this is going to add some nice data points to this. In this case, I'm always adding these predefined mathematical functions. You could just as easily add in like a random set of data points as well. And so I'm adding that to data list 2. And then I can add that to my series. Right? Like the World Series of Baseball consists of multiple games. A data series consists of multiple lists. And I'll title this one Sin of X. Maybe I'll give the other one a better title. Maybe I'll call it Parabola. All right, let's go ahead and see what this looks like. Right, we'll just see if all goes according to plan. We're going to see 2 line charts on the same graph. Ah, very nice. And so here we've got our parabolic graph, and we also have the sine graph. Excellent. And if you wish, you can also reposition the legend. You can change colors. You can add a title. You can do basically the same set of formatting options that you had for a pie chart. All right, very nice. The last type of chart I would like to show you is something called a bar chart, which is really quite similar to a line chart in that we'll graph a series of data. So heading over to the bar chart example, once again, I'm starting from a basic template file, and we're going to create a bar chart in JavaFX. Right, same public static void main as always. Same template start method. Creating a bar chart here. I'll go ahead and up the font size, root.setStyle, FX font size 20. All right, so similar code. We're going to go ahead and start off by creating 2 axes. Often, you're displaying information like in a bar chart, we're displaying something like the frequency of an object or different amounts of categorical data. And so, for instance, let's talk about fruit again. Maybe we want to display amounts of different types of fruits harvested at different times of year. So I'm going to create 2 axes, just like we did for the line chart, except the first one, the horizontal axis, is going to be a category axis. And that's going to be a new category axis. If you want, you can also set a label for these as well. Let's say x-axis set label. And this is maybe, I don't know, fruit. Next, I'd like to create a number axis since I'm displaying a quantity on the y-axis, on the vertical axis. So that's going to be a number axis. Y-axis is equal to a new number axis. Y-axis dot set label. Let's label that as amount. Okay, now that I have my two axes, I'm ready to create a bar chart. Bar chart called chart. It's a new bar chart using the x-axis and y-axis objects we just set up. We're also going to need to create an observable list. Call that, once again, data list. And this is storing, in this case, again, it's storing kind of like a pair of information. It's actually xychart.data again. And that should be, I'm putting this in the wrong spot. It's going to be equal to a new, oh, not new. This is from FX collections dot observable array list. All right. And in this case, we're still using XY chart because we still have two pieces of data, one going on an x-axis and a y-axis. And the XY chart types are kind of inferred by the different axes we have here. So since in this case, we have kind of a category axis that'll represent string data, the number axis represents numeric data. When we create our new XY chart, we'll need to make sure we pass in parameters with those types. So data list, let's go ahead and add a new XY chart dot data, and maybe apples, and this will be 42. Maybe it'll do a second data point, bananas. Maybe this will be 20, and let's do one more. Maybe oranges, 5. All right, we've got some data added to the list. Next, I'm going to create a series, right, which can contain multiple data lists, and then I'll attach the series to the chart. So next, let me copy these lines of code. Now this is taking in an XY chart series. I'll name this variable series list. Then I will add this data list to the series. And so maybe this is amount harvested in, I don't know, the spring. So let's say series list dot add a new XY chart dot series spring, and that's data list. All right, next let's take the chart, and then we're going to set data to be the series list. I always have to remember to display my chart. So root.getChildren, and then add the chart to it. Okay, let's try running this, see how it looks. All right, sure enough, a lot of apples, some bananas, not so many oranges. Again, these are the different fruits, the different amounts we've harvested. And again, this is the spring. If you really only have the one set of data, remember you can hide the legend associated to a bar chart the same way we did to a pie chart. You could set legend visible to false. But I would like to add a second set of data to this as well. Right, so let me go back into bar chart example. Maybe I want to create a second data list. I'm actually going to copy this code, the declaration of the data list and adding some data to it, and create data list 2. And I'll just add different amounts of these data points. So maybe 30 apples, 8 bananas, and 56 oranges. Right, so again, we've created a second data list. And let's say we also want to add that to our series, our list of lists. This represents the summer harvest. Because sure, why not? That will be data list 2. Okay, let's go ahead and compile that. Also give that a run. So we should see kind of 2 bar charts. And sure enough, right, we've got in spring and summer, you can see the number of apples harvested has gone down, the number of bananas harvested has gone down, but the number of oranges has gone way up. And so this gives you a nice way of comparing different sets of data. Again, we can change the way some of this looks. I will just for fun say chart.setTitle. Maybe I'll set the title to say something like harvest counts. And let's also do chart, I think there's something called set category gap. And so if you want to put some spaces between those different groups, maybe I'll put 60 pixels of space in there. And let's also move the legend off to the side. So let's also say maybe chart.set legend size to side.left. I think this will make it a little bit more readable. What am I doing? Chart.set legend, not size, side. Okay, let's give this a run. And sure enough, it'll always, of course, resize to the window. So if I drag this out, there we go. And that is how you create 3 different kinds of bar charts, not 3 different kinds of bar charts, 3 different kinds of charts, pie charts, line charts, and bar charts with JavaFX.